Hi, this is Ed. You're here again on Global TV Talk Show. I'm broadcasting from the studio in Palm Desert, California, where yesterday it was like 109. Day before was 114. But um, we're joined by people in so many different places here. This is great. Philip Berry and I have known each other a very long time. Philip, thank you very much for speaking again and for all of your mentoring and guidance over the years and business. You have deep experience as managing HR and people, global HR with Colgate in 60 countries. Why don't you give us a brief expose of that past career? And then I want you to take a few minutes, please, as our opening keynote and talk about preparing local talent to be global leaders and get this turn of words now. His present experience is preparing leaders to be global talent. It's great language. Philip Berry.
Hi, everybody. Really glad to be with each and every one of you. I actually started my global career when I was at Procter and Gamble, and was working in developing new organizations, new organizational structures, and also doing leadership development throughout the United States and also throughout LatAm at that time. And then after other career moves that I have, I went to Colgate-Palmolive, where I was the VP of HR for different international divisions. So at one time, I was the VP of International Development, cover all of Africa, all of Eastern Europe, and all of the Middle East. And then moved to to a position where I was living in Europe as a VP of HR for all of Colgate Europe in human resources, and then I had Latin America, had LatAm, which included all of Latin America from as far south as Chile and Uruguay to throughout Central Europe and Costa Rica and Guatemala, Mexico, all the countries in between, including the Caribbean. And so when I think about my job as a global human resource person, my main job outside of managing expatriates, doing executive compensation, doing organizational development, was also to ensure that global talent was available for the company. And so when I think about LATAM specifically, I played a very key role in helping to move local talent so that way they could be global leaders. And in fact, if I think about right now, the president of Colgate in the US is is from Colombia. Another person who is in Asia, was from Guatemala. Another person was, I could go on with a few if you looked on the organizational chart. What you'll see is that there was a big move in place that we had to ensure that we didn't have people who were just designated to the regions or the countries that they were working in. I mean, which is what a number of companies do. They say, okay, well, I'm going to just prepare people so that they can run the operations in Peru or in Ecuador or in Guatemala. But what you want to do is to identify talent just like other parts of the company develop, so that way they are mobile. And by to be mobile, then what we want to do is to, one, develop a preparation plan for them. And so I broke a number of barriers that existed where there was a feeling, and some of you will appreciate this, that, well, if you're working in maybe one part of the world, then maybe you can't work in another part of the world. And so what we wanted to do was to break down those philosophical and organizational barriers, so that way people were prepared to be a global expatriate, and meaning that they could move anywhere in the world no matter who they were. And that's a challenge that many, as I was working with my colleagues in a number of other companies, international companies, and there's a difference between just being an international company and a global company in my mind, because a global company means that you have human resources that can move anywhere. Because you have prepared them so that way they could manage those positions, those places. I'll give you one interesting thing with the let me use Central Europe. Let me use Romania as an example. When the Berlin Wall came down in 1989, and so that was when I was the VP of Human Resources for the International Business Development Group. And so we were looking at how and throughout Russia, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, all of those places we can move resources there. And so one of the things that we discovered, we looked at the similarities in the capabilities of people. Let's just one country, Romania, Romance language, right? And so when you talk about Spanish, people in Spain learning Romanian, much easier. Hungary might be a little different, because that's not a Romance language. But the other thing that we looked at was the marketplace itself. And so we said that what we want to do is to have individuals who are very expert in being able to manage marketing and sales and development, in an emerging market situation, which is what Romania was. And so we said, well, where did we get those from? Well, we can go to Costa Rica and to Guatemala easily and find people who are managing those environments very well, and we could move them over to Romania so that way they can resource all of the functions at a high level of excellence. And it's something that, and so then what we did also was to have them to develop local talent, in a very different way than they would have been developed before, because in those countries which were more in a command economy as opposed to a market economy, in Russia is a command economy, and so they don't have the type of skills and competencies, in order to look at the marketplace in a different way. And so that's why we brought people in who understood that. Another small example, and I'm just using Romania as a microcosm. When we would go to the like Romania, maybe Czech Republic, and you go, it used to be Czechoslovakia at that time, you look at the marketplace itself. So you go to, like, if you go to New York, you go to a store and you'll see people swishing you with perfume and everything as soon as you come in. They're marketing, they're demonstrating the products. That was not the case in Romania before. What happened was that individuals, you would have products there on the shelf, and people just saw themselves as, well, let me just put this on the counter. Let me put this on the counter. They weren't selling things from their physical makeup. They weren't looking like individuals who really cared about the product, that they weren't smiling, they weren't interfacing with the customer, and so we brought people from LatAm over who knew how to do that very well. So from Venezuela, for example, we brought them over there and to teach them how they can operate in a command economy in a very different way. So that's how you use global talent in order to move an emerging market situation so that it could be more of a developed, quote unquote, economy. Now, if you go to Romania now, you're going to see it the paseos look somewhat like in Argentina. It's like everything is decorated very nicely. The stores are very nice. The merchandising is set up very well. The people who are there are very good. And that enabled us to move that talent from like a Romania, to another place in the world, like down to Middle East or something, or, to, anywhere, down to anywhere, South Africa or somewhere. So that was the concentration that I did. And this is the other piece, and I'll stay short on this so I'm not monopolizing. The important thing is developing an individual development plan for local people, so that way we can begin to identify the type of projects and assignments that would make them global resources, that would enable them to manage more expansively from a functional standpoint and from a business standpoint. And the other thing is that to develop their skills, like many times people always say, well, let me hire a smart person. Well, IQ is not enough. In all of the work that I'm doing now with people, if you don't work with people so that way they are developing their EQ, their emotional intelligence, then they're not going to be impactful. But as a global resource, you need more than that. You have to go from IQ to EQ to CQ, which means that you have to develop their cultural capability, the cultural quotient. So that way, from an interpersonal standpoint, they understand what it's like when you're going from one country to another. You don't come like Americans. Matter of fact, sometimes Americans say, "Oh well," or Brits. I mean, also happy to see it there too. I mean, I saw this certainly there over the 50 years that I have been working in organizations. And they said, well, we can move them to a country and they can go anywhere. Well, what we want to do is to break down the fallacy, that Americans and Brits can work anywhere, because if they don't have the cultural skills to relate to people, to build development, to develop skills, to mentor, to give feedback, they're not going to be impactful. So anyway, so those are some of the things. That was my whole focus on a global, from a local to a global basis.
Philip, that's brilliant. So when we get into the discussion cross panel here, I want you to talk about what you're presently doing with
Mm.
leadership development. Let's go to Madrid. Sergey, when you were with AbbVie, with Angela, you co-wrote a book of all about feedback, right? And that's what Philip was just stressing here, engagement and feedback. How are you taking that forward now into your current new role?
That's right. Can I just make sure that you can hear me well? Because my
I
Zoom is...
hear you great.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, you have a wonderful voice.
Thank you. Indeed, the book is called Fair Talk, 3 Steps to Powerful Feedback. And it's a primer on what a leader needs to know on how to give effective feedback and how to build a culture of feedback within their team, within their department, within their company. Right now, I'm using it everywhere. In my coaching, when I coach my clients and I need to give them feedback, I'm using the 3-step model, which is tell me why it matters, tell me how I'm doing, tell me what I need to do different. And then they start using it with their people. The first step, tell me why it matters. Very important. So often missed, because we're all running, we skip over that. But if you don't explain to people why they should care about what you're about to say, why this matters to them, why it's personally meaningful, they're gonna just ignore what you're gonna say. The second step, tell me how I'm doing. Well, that's the typical meat of feedback. But the third step, that's future looking information. That's feed forward. That's what really gets people motivated and energized, because it's no longer about what I did in the past. It's about how I can be better in the future. And sticking to this routine, sticking to this practice and doing it over and over works. It's proven. It's easy to do when you've tried it and you've learned it. And now I use it in my programs. I use it in coaching. I use that in consulting companies that want to integrate it into their performance management practices, or if they want to strengthen their feedback practices.
So the why, WHY, is to give people an edge, and that's one of your basic underlying themes now, isn't it? You get the edge.
The why creates meaning. The why connects. The why is at the center of everything that we do, why we get up in the morning. Unless you have a powerful why, don't expect from your people the what and the how. So that's why Simon Sinek always starts with why. That's why powerful feedback will start with why. And that's why all great companies start with the purpose, the why. The why today must be at the center of all great company, great leadership, great products. We'll see more and more of that, because and we see this rhetoric, and it's more than rhetoric. It's really starts being the practice and the way of living and the way of doing business. We see this in the purpose-driven, the purpose-centric way of management, with the why at the center.
Well, thank you for this. Let's go to Stephen Howard. Stephen, you've written this book called Humany, Humony, and it's hot. So it's about a new way of management, or it's just being more commonsensical?
A bit of both, more way of leading rather than management. In fact, one of the things I say in the book is that most leaders need to unlearn management, relearn to be human, and most importantly, learn to be people-centric. And I want to play off of what Sergey was saying here a little bit too, is that in the book, I kind of take feedback, and I take it, I don't want to say 2 steps further than Sergey, because I know he just gave us a brief capsule of what his book is about. But I focus in there, yeah, the why is important, but the impact to me is more important, to explain to the employee what they're doing, what the impact they're having, what value do they bring, number one, give them what I call a clear line of value so they understand the value. And that's the why to them, not the corporate purpose, not the corporate why, but the individual why is where I would link my thinking with Sergey's. And then with that is the impact they're having. How are they impacting the team? How are they impacting cross-functional teams if they're doing? How are they impacting the customer is as equally as important as understanding the why, the purpose behind it.
Danielle, would you please comment on all this?
Of course. Well, it's for us to have leadership. It started for us as, I don't know, having to have someone to answer to, and now we have to change this view. We have to be more, I will paraphrase Stephen on this, but we have to be more human on doing that. So it's a challenge. We are really used to do things the same way we did in the past. So that's, I would say it's a challenge, but we are evolving step by step. So in my opinion, we are, in the process of making something new. And I think that's where we are right now based on what Stephen said.
Yeah, so is this the same, I'm getting lost in my own words here, but are your colleagues doing the same kind of thing, using that same kind of an approach in US and in Europe? Danielle?
I had to think. But the thing is, from my standpoint, I think that we are still changing. We still have lots of room to grow. But at the same time, there is this appetite to change the things that we are doing right now. So I do believe that my colleagues, my counterparts, they do as I am. They are thinking, they are trying to find answers, they are trying to find new ways to do the very same thing that we are doing about people. So it's, if I can say, thinking about it, I can say we are in the middle of a process of change. Like we are not changing yet, but we are thinking about it because we are seeing the need to do that.
You're in the
Philip?
transition state.
Yeah, yes, Philip, please.
Yeah, no, you're in the transition state, and I think that's important for organizations to realize that you're not, it's like Alice in Wonderland. You weren't the same that you were before, but now you're in you're not where you want to be, but you're different, which is an important piece, because what it speaks to is being able to broaden the emphasis of why, as Sergey penned. The issue, why is this important, and if people can understand and then have a business and a personal reason for doing something differently, then that is when they're going to be changed. Change doesn't come unless they see that happening, that rationale. So that's a
Um,
good place to be.
and maybe just a couple of examples could have. I'm thinking because early this year I sat down with a key talent who was rough around the edges, a bit arrogant, too judgmental, talking down to other people, and very ambitious, very smart, hardworking. So I told her, "Do you want a career? Do you want accelerated career? Do you want opportunities? Do you want leadership development? Do you want to go abroad for an international assignment?" She said, yeah. So you're gonna cut this, you're gonna change, you're gonna be nice to people. And if that doesn't happen, you're not gonna get further than where you are now. That was her why. Ambitious, career driven. That was the hook. So that was what was necessary for her to start listening to my feedback. Another person who was very affiliation driven, wanted to belong, and for that was overly protective, overly immersing herself into what the team was doing, always trying to help, and as a result, micromanaging. I said, well, you care about others. You want to do the best for them. But in doing so, you're robbing them of opportunities to learn. You're robbing them of opportunities to make their own mistakes. You're robbing them of opportunities to shine on their own in their own right. Is that the caring leader that you want to be? A different case, a different why. Immediate change. So once you find that why, and once you hang your feedback on that emotive, powerful, personal hook, people listen, they change, they take action.
Fascinating. Jorge, as a leader of several companies, advisor, mentor, coach, and many of them are women. Jorge, how are you managing that challenge?
Well, it's just listen, because if you talk the first, you are not able to comprehend some situation, especially in different countries as is knowledge. But I think it's important to things that we are talking here, like the why. The why is like a Socratic, a philosophy mentioned. I think so. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you need to first answer why. Why we need to this? And when we work with a lot of women, they are very focused in so many things at the same time that you need to approach them and say why we need to do this, why we need to prioritize it. And as I mentioned, Steve, like the human, you need to be empathic with those situations in each country. That if you don't answer, that they are going to figure it out and prioritize and to make best approach for that way that she needs. I think you are lost like a leadership. Sometimes it's better to be quiet and to comprehend, to hear them, and after that realize what is priority, why would you need to move forward, and what is the specific for the best for all the company.
Yeah, okay, great. So the personalities of the different people, many of them are financially successful outside of LARM, and with long-standing status within their local communities. So it's quite a collection of people, and I'm impressed that the organization has developed, the industry, the relocation industry has developed, and LARM has been an integral part of that. And to what extent are you using technology to communicate and manage relocations? I want to make sure that you know the quality of what my friend James Moss is doing with his new product. So, James, do you want to step in here?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to just it's a fascinating discussion, by the way. And I think the whole talent piece of, what motivates people and why they, why they go ahead and they do things very positively or not, I think is really important. Um, I think the whole thing about people is it is a people business. I think relocation, managing people is all about, the sort of the psychology of it. Um, And I think technology is really interesting because technology is an incredibly powerful tool. I mean, obviously stating the obvious here. But the thing about technology is that it mustn't lose sight of the people side of the equation. And I think the overlay on that is that there's been a major generational shift. It's been around for a while, with millennials and now Generation Z. And talent has changed. It works differently from my generation and some of the panels here. And my response to that was moving to a mobile phone app approach because the people we work with, people who sort of relocate on lump sum or SMEs or self movers, work very differently from the way that my father did. For instance, when he worked with Xerox Corporation for about 20 years, and it's a whole shift. um, the model for today's generation who work off mobile phones with text often. I like the reference to Simon Sinek earlier on because he's a really interesting guy, but he sort of reflects that change of talent, and I think a lot of it is managers and getting their and HR and mobility, getting their head around that. What we do is we sort of assume that people sort of know what they want to do and where they want to go. They just need that extra bit of help to get there and to sort it out. It's not a red carpet scenario, but people are very independent. They have a lot of tools at their disposal these days. And technology can be super efficient, can also be super cost effective. I mean, you can save a fortune if you use tech sensibly. But basically, it's understanding your customer, it's understanding the user, is understanding your talent. And I think why feeds into that really well. And I think that's the challenge for all of us.
Stephen,
It's all about people. I mean, it's every business is a people business. When it amazes me when I start, doing sales training with people and they talk about, well, we sell to this organization, we sell to that organization. No, you don't. You sell to people in that organization.
Yeah.
You sell to people in the other organization. Yeah, you don't make a sale with Xerox or IBM or anybody else. You make a sale with the people at those organizations. So totally support what James says. And, that's the focus of Humany. Humany is a word I created, and it combines humanity, and harmony. And it talks about, emphasizes the need for leaders to create workplaces of well-being and harmony. And, people laugh at me when I talk about harmony in the workplace. They say there's no such thing, but there can be. In some organizations, there is.
Stephen, you've recently been on many other programs, just not mine, and you've been in front of large groups now talking about what you just said. How have you been impacted from this experience of being invited and welcomed to say these things that you spent months creating for this book? But these are things that you've always done in your own practice. And now you're out there being applauded for doing what probably seems pretty obvious to you.
Well, thank you, Ed. And by the way, you are my favorite show, so don't worry.
Good.
It's not about me. It's about the message, and I keep emphasizing that to people. I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy the fact that the message is resonating with people, in everything from small organizations on into large organizations, even associations. I spoke last week at the National Association of Home Builders event in Cincinnati, and so that's an association of people, not a company, so to speak. Although they're a very large organization themselves, they have over 300 employees, I think. But yeah, I'm just pleased that people are. It resonates with them, and personally, it has satisfaction. That's all I can say. But it's not about me; it's about the message.
Okay, back to Philip. Philip is the author of a book called Being Better Than You Believe. I hope I didn't screw that up, Philip.
No, that's right. Being Better Than You Believe, 8 Steps to Ultimate Success.
Yeah, and that was written a long time ago, but it's still real.
Yeah, it's interesting because I get a lot of resonance from it, even now with a number of people who I'm coaching, in fact, or people in organizations. And really what I focus on now, a lot of my focus now is on helping people to fortify their personal brand, in terms of understanding, and this is something that has to do with clarifying their why, and then you want to think about where, and how, and what do I need in order to make that happen. And I find, especially as I am working with people who are at a leadership level, who are looking at a new way of positioning themselves, it carries a lot of weight in that area. In terms of they haven't really taken the time to identify what their personal brand is, and who are they right now, what all of the experiences that they've been through, what does that make them able to do now? And also I think it helps them to think about what they can do tomorrow. Matter of fact, I was just before this session, I was talking with a person who is a chief operating officer in an organization, and she is trying to think about, well, should I be a COO? Should I be a CEO? And so I'm working with them on this. Let's talk about who you are, all of the things that you've been through, all of your graduate education, all of your international experience, and then you think about your life cycle. I mean, I'm at a point, especially leaders now, when you're beyond 55 years old, one needs to think about, well, how am I going to live the back 9 of my life? The next 10 years, what contribution am I going to make, and where am I going to make it, and how am I going to put that together? So I wind up going back to this ground zero with people to identify those pieces. And it's really enlightening. You would think that a number of them already have it all figured out, and they don't. And that's the benefit that I bring to them in terms of that situation. I mean, I have another client who's a lawyer who is very well established in a business that he has. And so he's saying, I want to do something else. I want to be able to, I'm not going to develop another type of business in another country. And in fact, he already has made some, as we outlined a strategy, he has made some great inroads into this new business, which will double, some of the millions that he already has in place. So that's the type of enlightening conversations that I have now, because a number of people, when you're younger in your career, then you're just saying, well, how am I going to move up in the organization? But what we want to do is to look at how we make leaders global talent, so that way they can think. That's the phrase where I talk about how can leaders be global talent. There's a way for them to do that. And however, they have to increase their CQ for sure. So that way they understand what other markets are available, what other products, what other services. They understand more about the competition, and they understand how they fit in. So what I'm doing really when I'm helping individuals on an individual basis, I'm helping them think about the whole piece from a strategy. Personal branding is not just a nice to do type of exercise. It's a strategic effort that individuals have to engage in order to increase their wherewithal.
Thank you, Philip. It's brilliant. Let's go back to Danielle. Danielle, do you provide coaching, mentoring to the transferees so that they perform better and grow as people while on assignments?
Well, that's a challenge, I think. The first cost to be cut for mobility normally is cultural training and coaching and this kind of things. So, which
That's
is a shame.
tragic, huh?
Yeah,
Tragic.
that's a shame. That's a shame. But here we do have support, internal support, and we do see that is important for everyone moving to another country to at least have the basics in cultural, well, the cultural basic knowledge for you to go to another country to have a lesser impact. Of course, there's there is the need of something more deep in order to assist that, we do have ways to provide it, but normally in a baseline we can provide that internally, and we see that in a whole new level because people have to have has experienced less of a big impact. We do have cases where we need to intervene, where we need to have like a external coach because internal one doesn't work that good because people don't believe in the company to do that. They have to hire someone locally or to hire someone for another company. But we do see the good impact of that. In Brazil specifically, I have two companies that assist me really great with this kind of service. And I think it would be mandatory. That's why when I see companies cutting off this kind of support, it's really a shame because it makes the process better every time it happens.
Yeah. So, Stephen, can you advise Danielle on how perhaps to uh, not enlarge his thinking? Of course not, but just another cue. You know, what's a transition, like a yellow brick road pathway to achieving something that the company is not willing to support?
Well, I don't know about other coaches. I actually, I have a couple of people I'm coaching that are paying for it themselves. And unfortunately for the organizations, Danielle, both of these people are going to leave their organizations in the near future and go somewhere else and I actually give them a discount. I kind of admire people who are going to invest in themselves. So I give them about a 25% discount on my coaching fee. What I would recommend to Danielle, though, is find a coach um, who can work with more than one people in your organization and give you a bulk package. I have a client in California that I work with, and I'm coaching 6 different people in their organization. And obviously, I've given them a really good price, understanding, we started this during the pandemic. And so it continues now. I've just kept my fee flat for them. And I think they're going to add another person on next month. So find somebody who can give you some kind of a bulk package for coaching 4 or 5 or 6 people at one time. That works very well. So that may be the yellow brick road for you. The other might be, if they pay for it themselves, just try and figure a way to reimburse them for that.
That's interesting. Jorge, are you using coaches?
Currently, no, because we have a lot of, well, we use coaches for our clients, but not internally right now because we have a lot of experience with our directors in each country that they coaching their teams and but we currently not outsourcing that kind of coaches. But I think we need it in the next future.
Yeah. So what do you see with the growth of Chinese companies and coming into Latin America? Are you into that? Are you just watching from the side?
No. Yeah. We need to be always aware about the transition and the investment, and the Chinese one is one of the most important in Latin America because they have a lot of investment in infrastructure and supply chains and other stuff like technology, especially in this network about telephone. But in fact, it's very interesting because each culture is very different, but when you figure it out that they can work together, it's like the same. It's very interesting because Latin America is very dynamic, and when you receive some person from Asia, Europe, you explaining why we manage all this situation through the economic or society. It's very fun, and they love Latin America. They decide to stay here and grow this business and making more achievement for their company.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that information. So I have a friend here in San Diego that recently visited an old friend in Uruguay. And he came back, and so we were having drinks, and he was saying just how wonderful Uruguay
Yeah.
is. Yeah, and most people don't know anything about that area.
Yesterday I was talking about this kind of different of the each culture. Then the Uruguayan people is so nice that you think sometimes that there is a trick, because they are so nice, they are so kind, they are always open arms to help you as a foreign or something. That it's very interesting. And Uruguay is, in fact, it's a little country, but it's always a great heart to receive all the foreigners who want to live, who want to visit, and whatever you want to do in Uruguay.
So it'll be a good place to buy real estate.
Yeah, 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 and they have a great immigration structure for that.
Yeah, Philip, you're smiling there. Do you have personal experience in that country?
Oh yeah, no, I've been to all the Montevideo. I mean, I love all of those. I've been to every one of the countries in throughout LatAm except for Bolivia and Paraguay. I've visited all of the other ones, and it's just so much richness when Jorge talks about the richness of the people and visiting there. It's one of the things I have great connections still with a number of friends who are there who are improving and making the difference and paving the way with new insights.
This is great. Sergey, so when you were based in Irvine and had responsibility with AbbVie for Latin America, it was sort of an integration because of the new acquisitions, right? And then, getting them to do their own thing, but to do it the AbbVie way.
I would say that it was an integration and not necessarily one over the other, but finding ways on how to merge the two cultures. Because for those of you who are unfamiliar with the situation, back in 2020, AbbVie, a large pharmaceutical company, bought Allergan, that is most known for its brands like Botox or Juvederm, facial aesthetics. They have very different business models. Allergan is very much has direct interaction with the doctor. It's very similar. It's more similar to FMCG than the traditional pharma. So bringing them too close together would have been disastrous. It would have created a monster, not good either for one nor for the other. So up until today, both companies operate sort of independently when it comes to the business model. So cultural integration, but keeping business models separately. And that's what our efforts were targeted at. And I believe that we did a fantastic job in making that happen.
Well, way to go. Philip, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I was wondering because when one of the things that I found in looking at companies who are based in different parts of LatAm, the integration of people, northern cone of the continent versus southern, and the integration from a cultural standpoint is extremely important. And one of the reasons why many acquisitions actually fail, not only anywhere, is because they don't have that cultural integration. That is understanding the values, the style, the skills, and the sensitivity of people. If they don't have that, then if they aren't able to communicate, or if they carry an unconscious bias that keeps them from connecting with people in a more affirmative, inclusive manner, then from a business standpoint, they will fail. And that's why, matter of fact, you look at some of the great mergers that have come about where Daimler-Benz with Chrysler, and the reason why it failed is because the lack of cultural integration there. It wasn't because they didn't have smart people. They had smart people. They had great products. What they didn't have is the understanding of how to work together as a team, and have a we system as opposed to a me dominating things.
Interesting. Stephen, we're coming to a close here in the next 5 minutes or so. I invite you and everybody here to come back on Global TV in coming months, and we can continue this discussion and bring in some other people, including women. But Stephen, what do you have on tap for September?
Well, September starts tomorrow, believe it or not. And on tap, I'm actually, as a result of this show, I'm giving a workshop tomorrow in Mexico City to a relocation company about human leadership. So thank you very much. So,
that's great.
Probably why some of them aren't on the show today. They're probably in the air traveling from various places. So that's on tap. I'm also speaking at a leadership conference virtually in mid-September. And hopefully I'm writing a little bit. I haven't written in 3 weeks, so I've got to get back to writing.
Yeah, you're a slacker. Like, how many books do you have? What, about 10? You're slacking.
Actually, Philip, I have 22. But
I'm sorry.
Well,
but I'm working on 23, 24, and 25, which may be my problem. I need to focus on one of them, not all three.
why don't you just, if you don't mind using this platform to reiterate your formula for writing, the 4x4 thing? Or
4x4? Oh, it's stuck with you. You're going to write a book someday, I know.
Oh, well, yes, I am. But
4x4. The 4x4 works for me, the people I coach, and I'm actually working with a lady in Suriname, believe it or not, helping her publish her book. It's a straightforward format: is sit down and come up, what are your 4 main messages that you want your book to convey? And this is for nonfiction. So what are your 4 main messages? So let's say it was about feedback. You might talk about the feedback process. You might talk about positive feedback and negative feedback, whatever you want to call it. Then for each of those 4 messages, whatever your key messages are, you have 4 key points that substantiate that. And that gives you 16 chapters. So 4 sections of the book, 4 main messages, with each one having 4 supporting messages. And that's how I have people outline their book. It never ends up that way. I mean, my Human Leadership, I think, is 17 chapters. The book before that, I think, was 18. It will change during the writing and editing process. But this is my formula for getting people to get their thoughts down and get a structured process so they can start writing.
Great thought. Thanks.
all right, and this is recorded for the whole world.
Yeah, well, I just lost my trademark, I guess.
But they don't know what's in your body, though. It's in your mind. They can never figure that all out.
Okay, thank you all for being on Global TV Talk Show. Have a really good evening and day. And let's do this again. I enjoyed it and learned a lot. Much more than I thought I would learn an hour ago. So thank you.
Thank you.
The day when you learn something.
No, thank you.
Okay, so take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.